We also want to bring in NBC senior investigative reporter Laura Strickler, chief strategist for the Romney 2012 campaign and senior advisor for the Lincoln Project, Stuart Stevens, and of course, NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. She's behind that reporting and joins us here now on set. Laura, I want to start with you. One Omaha local told our station there that, quote, there's a lot of fear, definitely a lot of people not coming to work, businesses closing. What more do we know about the raids here? And as they expand, are they going to start to have more of an economic impact?
So, Christina, local officials tell us that ICE arrested at least 80 people at two businesses yesterday. One was a dairy owned by a Mexican company, and the second business was a meat processor that's locally owned. Now, it's well known that the meat processing industry relies heavily on immigrant labor, and we're watching to see if ICE raids two larger slaughterhouses that are also in Omaha. One is a facility owned by JBS Foods. The other is a Tyson Foods plant. The new Democratic mayor of Omaha was sworn in just the night before these raids happened. And he will be holding a press conference on this later this afternoon to discuss the raids, and we'll keep you posted.
And Julia, tell us more about the raids that you expect to see coming, where they're going to be, what the size of them is going to be, and how it all fits into the Trump administration's larger mission here.
Well, as Trump told our Garrett Haake in the Oval Office yesterday that he expects L.A. to be replicated across the country, both in terms of the scale of the operations and in terms of those military tactics. And so we're learning that ICE is going to deploy basically what they have as their in-house SWAT teams to 5 cities across the country. That would be Seattle, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and the D.C. area. These teams are called special response teams, and they usually go in when there's a really large-scale raid or there's some kind of threat. They were used when they raided Diddy's house just last year. You've seen videos of that. That was pretty extreme. A lot of times they have long guns and military-style vehicles. They would also be used previously in workplace enforcement if they were going to go raid, say, a place with 100 people and they needed backup for security. They haven't typically been used when they're going into communities and going to places where they might encounter people with no criminal history, if they're going into, say, apartment buildings or a Home Depot parking lot, as Stephen Miller has called for them to do. So this is definitely a ratcheting up. I think the question is going to be, will Trump also want to push to include Marines and National Guard in cities like that, just like they have in Los Angeles? It could be a matter of waiting to see how protests ensue, but we at least know ICE is taking this step to increase that military-style enforcement that we've seen in L.A. to this extent in at least 5 Democrat-led cities across the country. And it's a fight they want to have.
Wow. And Stuart, the New York Times is reporting the agency is now staggering shifts. So ICE agents are available 7 days a week. A former ICE director under the Obama administration told the New York Times this intense pressure to meet the White House immigration goals is only making room for unforced or even forced errors. Does it seem like there is more of a pressure to get this done quickly than to necessarily get it done right?
Yeah, I think we have to look at the total picture of the timing of this. I don't think it's a coincidence that this kicked off, hours after Elon Musk called on Donald Trump to release the Epstein files. This is a classic political move to change the subject. I don't think this is something that's helping Republicans at all. This is not what Donald Trump said he was going to do. He said he was going to arrest illegal criminals, people who are dangerous. Where are they arresting all these people? They're getting them at their workplace. So let me get this straight. They're supposed to be here just being a complete drain on the American economy. So you're going to their job where they're paying taxes and they don't get benefits to arrest them? I don't know. I think as this sinks in, that there's a fundamental American quality to see masked, unidentified men in garb you can buy on eBay picking people off the street. And it's just worth remembering, ask yourself, if you were stopped on the street and asked to prove that you're a U.S. citizen, what would you have on you that would prove it? Because a driver's license doesn't do it. Even our new fancy driver's license doesn't do it. A Social Security card doesn't do it. You would need to be carrying a passport, and you'd have to prove that it wasn't fraudulent. So we're really at this point where people are going around saying, "Can I see your papers, please?" I don't think that's a look that Americans like.
And Julia, as they expand these operations possibly to other cities, is there a concern? We just talked about the room for error here, but if you're trying to work in in areas that these teams maybe haven't deployed before. If, as it seems, they're not necessarily informing city officials, even sometimes police officials, where they're going in, is anybody talking to you about the concern for misunderstandings, for clashes between, different law enforcement agencies who don't know who's in charge, who don't know, and just for panic?
Yeah, I think there's a fear that escalating anything to this military-style tactic can really cause panic in communities. We also have reporting today that says that immigration judges, are being told to dismiss cases from the bench so that ICE can arrest people who are just coming to their asylum hearings right there in the courtroom. So
being told by whom?
By the Justice Department, because it's very strange, but immigration judges actually report to the Justice Department. So they're being told that. But all of this is really, in a way, to increase the environment of fear, because people who were following the rules, they may have pending asylum cases, they may have just been going to their jobs daily and have not committed any other crime. They are now at risk of being swept up in one of these enforcement actions. But I will say the real fear that I hear from ICE agents is not necessarily of working with their own SWAT teams, although that increases fear in the community. They get worried when they're working with a completely outside agency like the National Guard or the Marines, where they don't feel that they've been properly trained on how to work together. And they're worried that there could be a scenario where the Marines think that they're responding in a way to keep ICE secure, when instead they could incite a real clash that might not have been necessary.
All right. Laura Strickler, Stuart Stevens, and of course, Julia Ainsley, thank you all so much.